We're given this graph, we want to analyze it, and the first question we're going to ask ourselves is, where is the center? Well, here we see this is where the two asymptotes intersect, halfway between the two vertices, and it looks like it is at -4, 1. So that's the first thing that we're going to answer. And the next one we're going to ask ourselves is about the transverse axis. Transverse axis. Is it vertical? Is it horizontal? What's its equation? Well, the transverse axis is vertical. Okay, so we'll make that note. And what is the equation of that transverse axis? It's this vertical line. It is x equals -4. So the vertices always occur on the transverse axis. So that's the next thing we have to ask ourselves. What are the vertices? Vertexes, what are they? So where does the transverse axis intersect the hyperbola? So let's go back and look. Intersects it here. Where is that? X is -4, y is 3. And intersects it here. X is -4, y is -1. Now, we would like to figure out the asymptotes, but to do that, I have to identify the box. So I need to look at my span in X and my span in Y first. So let's think about that. From the center, what is the span in X to get to the box? 1, 2, 3. Span in X, 1, 2, 3. Let's make that note. Span in X is 3. And how about the span in Y from the center? The span in Y from the center, 1, 2 to get to the hyperbola or to get to the box. From the center, 1, 2. From the center, 1, 2. So the span in Y is 2. Well, that's enough for us to get the equation of the hyperbola as well as to get the equation of the asymptotes. So let's remind ourselves of the general form. This transverse axis is vertical, which means y will come first. If the transverse axis is horizontal, x comes first, but y comes first. So the general form, y minus k squared over a squared minus x minus h squared over b squared equals 1. You could switch a squared and b squared depending on your textbook. It doesn't really matter. But a squared is the span in y squared, and my definition here, b squared is the span in x squared. My center is 1, -4, so y minus 1 squared over what is my span in y? Span in y is 2 over 2 squared minus span in x minus h, x minus -4, that's x plus 4 squared over b squared. B is the span in x is 3 over 3 squared. Equals 1. So we believe this is our question. So let's copy it down again on the next page. We have y minus 1. Whoops. We have y minus 1 over 2 squared. Y minus 1 squared over 2 squared minus x plus 4 squared over 3 squared equals 1. Some information we had from the previous page. Center, -4, 1. Transverse axis was vertical, and the equation was x equals -4. Our vertices were -4, 3, and -4, -1. -4, +3, excuse me, and -4, -1. And I want to get the equation of the asymptote next. So let's go back and look at our picture and see what we have there. Slope, rise 2, run 3. Slope, rise -2, run 3. Again, span in y is 2, span in x is 3. So that gives us our 2/3 x. So our slope is 2/3 and our slope is -2/3. So we get a slope is 2/3, we get a slope is -2/3. But it's not just 2/3 x and -2/3 x because it doesn't go through the center. What does it go through? It goes through this point, -4, 1. So if I want the equation of my asymptotes, I can go ahead and use point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So that would be what? That would be y minus 1 equals m equals 2/3 x minus -4, x plus 4. Similarly down here, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Y minus 1 equals -2/3 times x plus 4. So those are our equations of our asymptotes. We have those. And we have the equation of our hyperbola. So let's go to Desmos and draw that, and then we'll find our foci lastly. So let's go to Desmos. So y minus 1 squared over 2 squared, or 4. Y minus 1 squared over 4. Minus x plus 4 squared. Over 9 equals 1. Looks like that. And then we have our two asymptotes, y minus 1, y minus 1 equals 2/3 of x plus 4. And y minus 1 is -2/3 of x plus 4. And we'll make those look like asymptotes. And we can see as we zoom it out, again, the graph gets closer and closer to the asymptote. So I feel pretty good about that. What's the last thing that I need here? I need to determine the foci. Remember, the hyperbola envelops the focus. So it's up here somewhere on the transverse axis. It's down here somewhere on the transverse axis. We want to see that. So what do we know? What's our rule? For hyperbolas, c squared is a squared plus b squared. So a squared 4 and 9. So c squared is 4 plus 9. C squared is 13. So c is plus or minus the square root of 13. So where does that put me on the graph? Directed distance from the center. The center is here, up root 13 from that point, down root 13 from that point. So what is that point? That point is -4, 1. We see that's the center. We have root 13 is the directed distance. The transverse axis is vertical, so we go up root 13 from that point. So that would be what? That would be -4, 1 plus the square root of 13. That's one focus, and then the other one would be -4, 1 minus the square root of 13. And those points are both focuses.